Hi, good morning, and welcome everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Alyssa Maeda. I'm the Communications Director at Washington Conservation Action, and the Environmental Priorities Coalition is really excited to share about our priorities for us for this really short legislative session. So we have a great group of folks who will be presenting each priority for you, and we'll have time at the end for question and answers. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Darcy Nonamaker. She's also from Washington Conservation Action and will give us a lay of the land before jumping into the first of the four priorities on our agenda today, which is protecting climate and environmental health funding. So over to you, Darcy.
Thanks, Alyssa. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Darcy Nonamaker. I'm the Government Affairs Director at Washington Conservation Action. And Washington Conservation Action, next slide, is a member of the Environmental Priorities Coalition. And that coalition is made up of 27 statewide groups. Since 2003, the coalition has adopted up to four priorities each legislative session, with the goal of speaking with one powerful unified voice on the biggest environmental and climate issues facing the state. Next slide. 2026, as you all know, is a short 60-day session, which is not a lot of time to tackle the major issues facing the state. In particular, addressing a large state budget shortfall when demand for public services is increasing, revenue from sales and property tax and other funding sources is in decline or is volatile, and the federal government has created significant uncertainty for delivering promised funding from the federal government. Governor Ferguson recently proposed his first complete budget proposal to the legislature in his term as governor, which includes the largest diversion of climate dollars in state history, and we'll talk more about that shortly. The coalition's 2026 priorities are designed to balance meeting the legislature where they're at and focusing on the budget, but also figuring out where we can make important progress on issues like climate change, recycling, affordability, energy reliability, and public safety. Our priorities either connect directly to the state budget, that's two of them are really nested in the budget itself, or are policies designed to be effective with minimal cost and include new opportunities for revenue to deliver results on the ground. With that, I will begin with our first priority, which is protecting climate and environmental health funding. Next slide. So this is really the priority focused on this state budget. And at the forefront, of course, now is around the Climate Commitment Act. But a little context first. Natural resources are one of the smallest pieces in the state budget, at only about 1.3% of general fund going to support natural resource programs, and natural resources making up about 2.5% of overall spending. The Climate Commitment Act is also very small in the operating budget at less than 0.5% of total spending made by the state coming from the Climate Commitment Act, and about less than 0.25% going to ongoing operating support for programs. Despite this small price tag, these investments benefit every community in the state, whether it's through clean air, clean water, healthy habitat, recreation, job creation, public health, and so much more. The return on investment is high. We know the state faces a $2.3 billion shortfall this year with a much larger deficit projected in the 2027 to 29 biennium. And as we've said in the past, when these budget shortfalls happen, environmental and climate funding is often at the front of the line for cuts or funding sweeps. Already in the 2025 to 27 biennial budget, state budget leaders rated $70 million from our state toxic pollution reduction fund, which has left that fund in a shortfall at this moment. As mentioned earlier, Governor Ferguson has proposed a $569 million diversion of Climate Commitment Act funds to backfill the entire general fund balance for the Working Families Tax Credit. Climate Commitment Act funds are projected to decline over time and were never intended to supplant other state dollars supporting programs, as that would leave those programs in jeopardy in the not too distant future. We also know that demand for climate funding exceeds the dollars available. More than 270,000 low-income households in Washington are considered energy burdened, and capital budget programs need CCA funding to weatherize, improve energy efficiency, convert old, costly heating systems to cleaner, cheaper options, all of which save hundreds of dollars annually on utility bills for these households. These investments also have the benefit of improving indoor air quality and health conditions for residents. Rebate programs to reduce costs of transitioning to cleaner options are also popular and regularly run out of money quickly. They help support local businesses, save energy and fuel costs on an ongoing basis. Despite these benefits, the federal government is rolling back rebate programs, leaving the state to use its resources to fill the gap. Next slide. So, what is this priority hoping to accomplish? This priority opposes the $569 million sweep of Climate Commitment Act funds in the governor's proposed budget. This is the largest single diversion of dedicated environmental dollars in state history. The impact of this diversion is devastating on multiple levels and runs in direct conflict with the vision of the law to add and not supplant funding for state programs. To do this, we will advocate for funding items that accomplish both climate pollution reduction and support affordability and local jobs. There is no shortage of well-established programs that can accomplish these win-win-win outcomes. We also know that the public supports using CCA dollars for its intended purposes. We are calling on the public to show up this year, just like they did when they supported the Climate Commitment Act at the ballot box just over a year ago. The public's voice is important, and they should contact their legislators to oppose the $569 million funding diversion, especially considering the governor's budget's being heard this week. This priority also seeks to ensure that environmental programs are not cut disproportionately to other areas of state government. You'll hear in a minute about wildfire resilience, which was cut at 52% last year in the two-year biennial budget, and that is much higher, at a much higher rate than other parts of state government. We will know that we are successful if dedicated funding sources are used for their intended purposes and are not tapped to plug the general fund hole that the state needs to fill. So thanks for your time, and I'll hand it back over to Alyssa.
All right, thank you, Darcy. Up next, we have Skippy Shaw with the Nature Conservancy.
Thank you, Alyssa. Hi, everyone. I lead state government relations for the Nature Conservancy here in Washington, and happy to share the second priority for the environmental community, which is really about a commitment the legislature made back in 2021. Next slide. So the priority is to restore full funding for wildfire resilience in our state, and this is based off a bill passed in 2021, House Bill 1168. That was a groundbreaking step to proactively address wildfire and forest health crises we were facing in Washington. It made a commitment by the legislature to fund an account that would address wildfire response, forest health, and community resilience at the commitment level of $125 million per biennium. However, the problem is, in the last year's budget, the biennium budget, that funding was cut in half, down to $60 million. This is risking a lot for our community safety, and we know wildfire costs are inevitable. We also know if you invest now in prevention, you are paying far less of a bill than when you pay for that suppression bill later on. And we already are hearing a little bit about what these cuts mean for our on-the-ground work. We're hearing that the Department of Natural Resources will have to cut hand crews that help to address and respond quickly to wildfire, that we are losing access to a camera system we are just starting to build up to detect wildfire early. We're losing pass-through grants to communities to do home hardening work to make sure their houses are resilient and prepared for wildfire, as well as general preparedness on when and how to get ready for a wildfire for their community. We're losing a lot of momentum gain on the work to get good fire, prescribed fire on the ground in advance that helps our forests become more healthy, and a lot of that direct wildfire work we need to do is really about getting our forests to a healthy place. So besides getting more good fire on the ground, prescribed fire on the ground, that also means forest treatments like thinning. Next slide. So the solution here is to get back and restore that full funding for that commitment of $125 million in the supplemental budget. We know these investments are working. We know the progress we made. And we've seen, for example, there's been fires even this summer where we saw some of the pre-work and the preparation work really stop those fires from becoming catastrophic. We have a report that'll be out next week that tells us really dramatically and concretely what these dollars mean. The report which will be authored by Greenlight Insights, will show that without fully funding 1168, we're risking over 30,000 acres of severe wildfire. We know that funding it delivers eightfold return on those investments and will help us protect many, many jobs. So we're excited to have that report out that really shows what it means to fully fund this and what it means for our state. And we know we can't lose momentum on the progress we've just started to gain on our wildfire crisis and forest health crisis in the state. And I just want to also name, besides the environmental community stepping up and it being a priority for us, we have a big coalition that includes firefighters, businesses, tribes, timber companies, labor, community organizations, local governments, and this is a priority across many legislative agendas for many coalition spaces this session. And with that, I'll wrap up.
Thanks, Skippy. Up next is Zach Baker with Northwest Energy Coalition.
Thanks, Alyssa. Good morning, everybody. My name is Zach Baker, the Regional and State Policy Director for the Northwest Energy Coalition. I'm excited to present the Data Center Environmental Protection and Affordability EPC priority. Next slide, please. Data center growth in Washington poses a rapidly growing challenge. These huge facilities have the potential to impact our climate and clean energy goals, energy affordability and reliability, environment, and communities. This is primarily due to the fact that these facilities use large amounts of energy and water. In many cases, an individual data center uses more energy and water than a small city. And as companies focus on building larger hyperscale and artificial intelligence or AI-focused data centers, their demand for energy and water are only expected to grow. In addition to large energy and water demands, there are air quality, greenhouse gas emission, and land use concerns with data centers. Further raising the stakes, data centers are projected to grow at a rapid pace. Data centers are the largest source of expected electricity load growth in the Pacific Northwest, with the most rapid data center growth expected over the next few years. The forecasted regional tech sector load growth driven by data centers could be equivalent to the electricity needed to power 2 to 4 additional Seattles by 2030. In Washington, multiple utilities are already facing requests for power to serve data centers that total more than 2 to 3 times the utility's current retail load. The Governor's Data Center Work Group convened last year surfaced the rapidly growing data center challenge and identified the need for legislative solutions. It's now on the legislature to take swift and comprehensive action to address this pressing issue. Next slide, please. So what's the solution? We believe the right protections and incentives could hold data centers to a high standard, one that centers communities and the environment while also fostering innovative solutions. For example, policy changes could drive data centers to partner with communities to accelerate the clean energy transition in Washington. To address this challenge and this opportunity, the legislature should pursue a package of data center-focused policies that will protect and further our state's climate and clean energy laws and goals, protect ratepayers from financial and reliability impacts, minimize impacts to communities and natural resources, including air, water, and salmon, and maximize benefits for communities. Achieving these outcomes will require a suite of environmental protection and affordability policies, hence the title of our priority. We are very much looking forward to working with the legislature to make these outcomes a reality this session. Thanks, and I'll turn it back over to Alyssa.
Great. Thanks, Zach. Last but not least, we have Heather Trim with Zero Waste Washington.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Alyssa. I'm Heather Trim. I'm Executive Director of Zero Waste Washington, and I'm here on behalf of the coalitions that are supporting the Bottle and Cans Recycling Refund Act. Next slide. So why do we need what is colloquially called a bottle bill? If you look at the top right-hand photo, what you see is one of Ecology's programs. This is actually out in the Ellensburg Central District. And when we do cleanups of highways, they find 42 pounds of beverage containers per mile. So the beverage containers are something that are very much part of litter along the highways, and also when we do cleanups along beaches and in open spaces and places like that. The middle photo on the bottom shows a study that Ecology did in 2022, where they they did a very detailed look at the types of litter that you find along the highway, and that's where they came up with the 42 pounds of beverage containers per mile. And the little blue photo of the commingled recyclables is just to indicate that in Washington, we've moved to a commingled recycling system so that for most residents who are doing curbside recycling, they put all their recyclables in one bin. And that means that the bottles, especially the glass bottles, are in with the paper and other things. And when the truck comes around to pick up the recyclables, it gets crushed. They crush everything down to 30% of the volume in order to have less truck trips, but it means that they crush the glass. And so the glass and the other beverage containers are then part of what you could sort of say is the contamination load of other recyclables. So getting the beverage containers out of the recycling system can help clean up the streams. Next slide. So across the US, there are 10 states that have bottle and can refund programs at the moment. These were all done years ago. And at that time, it was a big fight. The beverage industry was against, but now things have changed. The companies that make the plastic, the glass, and the metal are wanting clean streams, and they are supporting doing bottle bills now across the US. Next slide. So what are we talking about? We're talking about HB 1607, SB 5502, led by Representative Monica Stonier and Senator June Robinson. This bill was in the legislature last year, and the components of the bottle bill were in the Recycling Reform Act as well over the last several years. So this is not new to the legislature, but this year is going to be a very big push. How does it work? If you look at number 1 in the bottom left hand, so when consumers purchase beverage containers, they will pay the way the bill is structured, a 10-cent deposit. Then number 2, when they are done, they can return the beverage containers either with a bag, you can see the image there, a bag drop off, or they can do reverse vending. There'll be an online system, so you can just get credit onto an online system, or it'll be cash back immediately. And then number 3 on the right, this now clean stream will be recycled into new beverage containers. And in the bill is a target for reuse. So we will be able to have refillable bottles where the bottles will be sanitized and then refilled and sealed and sold again. This is the way it is right now in British Columbia and also in the Oregon, especially the Portland metro area, with beer bottles. Next slide. So what are the outcomes we expect from this? Right now, there's an estimated 3.8 billion packaged beverages that are sold in Washington each year, which adds up to a lot of tons of beverage containers. This will cover glass, metal, and plastic bottles and cans with a capacity from 40 milliliter up to 1 gallon, not greater than 1 gallon. It will not include drugs, milk, and infant formula. And from data from other states, these existing bottle bill states have reduced their littered beverage containers in public spaces and highways by more than 80%. And then in conjunction with the Recycling Reform Act that was just passed in 2025, this will increase it's modeled to increase the overall recycling from 40 to 70%. If you look at the chart, these are the models of this is a study that Ecology did in 2023 for the legislature. And the scenario 1 is a combined Recycling Reform Act and a DRS, deposit return system combined. So we go from 40% recycling today to a modeled 70% by 2032. And I'll turn it back.
All right, thank you, Heather. Now I want to just give us a couple minutes to answer any questions that you might have in the audience. You can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or there's a Q&A box where you can also type a question to us in the chat.
Alyssa, you see there's a question in the Q&A.
Thanks, Heather. I'll go ahead and read it out. Looks like this question's for Zach. How many large data centers already exist in Washington State?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And this is part of the challenge in what we are working for on this priority is more transparency about all of the numbers and how big the data centers are. From estimates that we've seen, there are about 100 plus data centers in the state. Typically, a large data center is defined, or hyperscale is defined as 100 megawatts. We don't know exactly how many megawatts each data center has, so I can't give you the exact answer there, but that again is part of what we are hoping to do with this priority is get some more transparency about the energy use of these data centers.
All right, I'm going to take a beat here to see if there's any more questions before we wrap up. Here's a follow-up for you, Zach. On data centers also, what are the best data sources to find information about locations of proposed new data centers?
That's a great question as well. And again, part of what we are hoping to try to address with this is that currently there aren't really great sources to find out where the locations of proposed new data centers are. A lot of that happens at the local government level, and sometimes there are non-disclosure agreements. So part of what we're trying to do with this priority is to have the data centers disclose their intended energy and water use prior to the permitting process, and that will then allow folks to have a better sense of where these data centers are siting.
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands or questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now. Here on the screen, you'll see my email address as well as my number. If you have any lingering questions that come up after this, feel free to shoot me a message and I'll be able to direct your question to the best speaker or the best organization. I just want to thank you again, everyone, for being here. We'll send out another email with a recording of this presentation as well as the slides, so you'll have that for your reference. And just want to thank you again and have a good rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.